Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the 19th International Conference on Mathematics and Computers in Science and Industry. I'm Dr. Sfendourakis, and it's an absolute pleasure to address you today here in beautiful Crete. So, when we think about artificial intelligence, we often view it through the lens of computer science, algorithms, or commercial industry. However, today we're going to look at a rapidly evolving frontier where code meets geopolitics, the arena of global statecraft. Intersection of technology and statecraft. AI is no longer just a technological tool. It has officially entered the realm of high stakes international relations. It's actively redefining how nations negotiate, gather intelligence, and project power geopolitical triad United States, China, Europe. Throughout this presentation, we will dissect a distinct three-way geopolitical dynamic. We will look at how the United States leverages private sector innovation, how China executes state-driven technological dominance, and how Europe navigates this race by establishing strict regulatory frameworks. We will explore how diplomats are shifting from traditional statecraft to a data-driven model using predictive analytics for crisis management and machine learning to analyze treaty compliance. Before we dive into the specific strategic playbooks of these global powers, let's first define exactly what we mean by AI diplomacy and look at the core technologies changing the game. So, to understand why we're having this conversation today, we have to look at how the rhythm of international communication has fundamentally broken away from its historical past. So, we have a spread transformations going on, which plays a serious role in the evolution of diplomacy, and diplomacy has transformed from slow paper based communication to dynamic digital environment where speed and real time decisions dominate. Diplomacy used to operate on caves, sealed letters, and weeks of deliberate parsing. Today, foreign policy happens in a split second, highly dynamic digital environment. The data deluge. Foreign ministries and embassies are completely overwhelmed by data. AI has shifted from a luxury to an absolute necessity just to sort, analyze, and make sense of this massive influx of information in real time. And AI is now essential to manage large volumes of information and accelerate coordination among foreign ministries, embassies, and international negotiations. Moreover, machine learning tools are now actively used to coordinate actions across global networks of embassies, ensuring that localized bilateral talks stay perfectly aligned with a nation's broader multilateral strategy. But managing data is just the beginning. Let's look next at how this technological evolution translates into hard power and strategic competition on the global stage. To understand how AI impacts diplomacy, we first need to look at what artificial intelligence actually means in practice. Rather than thinking of it as science fiction, we can understand it through two main concepts: machine learning and real world milestones. First, let's look at machine learning and pattern recognition. Modern AI doesn't rely on rigid line by line coding. Instead, these systems learn directly from massive data sets. They spot hidden patterns and improve their performance over time. This foundational ability is what makes practical tools like predictive analysis and natural language processing possible today. Second, let's consider the case of AlphaGo, a landmark example. A defining moment for machine intelligence occurred when Google DeepMind's AlphaGo defeated a world champion in the ancient game of Go. Go is incredibly complex, with more possible board positions than there are atoms in the universe. It cannot be won by brute force calculations alone. It requires intuition and strategy. AlphaGo proved that machines could master highly strategic intuitive environments. This historic match completely shifted public political perceptions of what machine intelligence can do. It set the stage for using AI in complex real-world fields like international strategy and global diplomacy. So many critics worry that artificial intelligence will completely replace human diplomats. But the reality on the ground is much more collaborative. AI is designed to augment human capability, not replace human intuition. Diplomats spend immense amounts of time passing treaties, drafting statements, and translating communications. AI automates these labor intensive processes, generating initial localized drafts in seconds. Real time sentiment analysis beyond, paper, beyond paperwork. AI actively scans global news, social media trends, and public broadcasts. This automated sentiment analysis allows ministries to measure how a foreign population responds to a policy announcement in real time, shifting focus to human elements. By offloading data, sorting, and crisis prediction to predictive algorithms, human voice regain their most precious commodity, time. This time is focused on high level relationship building, nuance, and strategic judgment. If we look toward the more shown in the left, a visual illustrating the data tracking and analysis in action. So, while optimizing the daily workload of an embassy is highly beneficial, the macro view tells a different story. Let's look at how individual nation states are organizing this technology into national security strategies. So, as we scale up from internal embassy operations to global geopolitics, we see that AI has created an entirely new domain of foreign policy, one characterized by delicate simultaneous dance of collaboration and fierce competition. On one side, we see cooperative efforts where nations pool data to track climate change or build shared safety frameworks. On the flip side, we are witnessing a rise in techno-nationalism where states use aggressive export controls, semiconductor restrictions, and exclusive technology alliance to lock out rivals. Also, we have the new face of soft power. Tech dominant countries are no longer just exporting cultural goods. They are using AI infrastructure as a diplomatic lever. By offering AI compute power, smart city algorithms, or cloud frameworks to developing nations, they are cementing long term geopolitical dependencies, systemic realignment. This dual nature is rewriting international law and traditional trade frameworks. AI is reshaping international law, public diplomacy, and traditional diplomatic practices, requiring adaptation to maintain influence. To put it bluntly, nations that fail to adapt their diplomatic corporations to these tech realities risk being sidelined in future international treaty negotiations. So now that we have established this broad geopolitical framework, let's look at AI's impact on diplomats' work and how AI is changing the role of the diplomats. So as we examine how this technology shapes the profession, a critical question emerges. Where exactly does a machine's capability end? And where must human judgment absolutely begin? The acceleration factor. AI drastically speeds up the internal cycle of diplomacy. Decisions that used to take days or weeks are now driven by predictive analytics and rapid response data pipelines operating in real time. The limits of automation. Despite these massive analytical speed gains, algorithms are fundamentally blind to context. They cannot replicate human empathy, they cannot decode cross cultural body language, and they cannot navigate the unspoken nuance of a high stakes bilateral negotiation. Crucially, an AI system cannot take moral or political responsibility for a failed treaty or an isolated conflict. Accountability is a uniquely human burden that cannot be outsourced to code. The ultimate goal is not a fully automated foreign service. It's a hybrid model where data informs the strategy, but human judgment makes the final call. So, striking this balance between code automation and human judgment brings us directly to our regional deep dive, starting with how this technology is affecting the modern diplomatic strategy. When we look at modern diplomatic strategy, we are no longer looking at technology as a standalone sector. Instead, AI has become foundational to the three core pillars of contemporary statecraft: security, cooperation, and influence. AI acts as an intelligence shield. On the national security front, AI acts as an analytical force multiplier. It processes massive streams of satellite imagery, communications data, and cyber threat indicators to predict geopolitical friction points before they escalate into open crisis. Foreign policy and international cooperation. In the realm of international cooperation, AI provides a platform for shared democratic values. By working closely with historical allies, states are aiming to harmonize technical regulations and create ethical guardrails that counter authoritarian uses of technology. Then, a negotiation chessboard. Finally, AI is transforming high stakes bilateral and multilateral negotiation. Diplomatic teams are now using machine learning models to simulate complex trade scenarios, map out alternative concession paths, and optimize strategic outcomes in real time. Transition Q. These three strategic pillars do not exist in a vacuum. Let's look at how they are really applied and if ethical considerations are appearing, questioning the AI enhancement in diplomatic strategy. So, while the strategic benefits of AI are undeniable, we must now confront the darker side of this technological shift, the fundamental ethical and governance liabilities that threaten the integrity of international relations. First is the danger of algorithmic bias. AI models don't think independently, they learn from historical datasets. If those past datasets contain systemic geopolitical bias or historical prejudices, the AI will simply automate and amplify those flaws, leading to discriminatory policy predictions. Secondly, there's erosion of trust. In diplomacy, trust is a primary currency. The rise of hyper-realistic generated deepfakes and automated misinformation campaigns makes it incredibly easy for malicious actors to fabricate crises, mimic state leaders, and poison the well of public discourse overnight. Thirdly comes the mandate for human oversight. To counteract this risk, the international community cannot rely on self regulation. We urgently need multilateral legal frameworks that draw a hard line in the sand, ensuring that final accountability and critical decision making power always remain with human operators. These ethical risks are not abstract problems for the distant future. They are active battlegrounds shaping the distinct national strategies of the major global powers. Diving into the world of major powers, we will start with a new, unique, market driven ecosystem of the United States. So, let us turn our attention to our first regional deep dive, the United States strategy. The American approach to AI dominance is usually rooted in a powerful alliance between private sector innovation and national security imperatives. The United States views AI through a multi-faced lens, weaving it directly into national defense, cybersecurity, defense vectors, and active foreign policy channels to protect its global position. Commercial drive versus state defense. Unlike state control systems, the United States rely heavily on its tech hubs like Silicon Valley to drive rapid commercialization. The strategic challenge here is successfully porting this fast moving private innovation over to federal and military frameworks, multilateral guardrails. To balance this rapid commercial growth, Washington actively leverages its diplomatic networks. The goal is to collaborate with traditional allies to establish global standards and ethical boundaries that mirror Western democratic values. The image on the right, showing the United States Capitol building overlaid with a digital grid structure, signifying the intersection of federal governance and technical integration. So the rapid commercialization and ethical AI frameworks draw a clear distinction against other state-driven models. So while the United States relies on market-driven innovation supported by government contracts, our next regional actor takes a radically different, highly centralized approach. Let's look at how China structures its technological statecraft. Now let's contrast this American model with our second regional power, China. Here we see a shift away from decentralized market-driven innovation to an aggressively centralized state-led model of technological power. In China, the dividing line between private tech companies and the state is virtually non-existent. AI development is mandated from the top down, aligning corporate research perfectly with Beijing's national targets. Military and civil fusion. A key pillar of this strategy is linking commercial AI breakthroughs directly to national security and military modernization. Advancements in civil and AI are immediately ported into state defense systems, the digital Silk Road. Beyond its borders, China exports this technology infrastructure to developing nations through its Digital Silk Road initiative. By providing 5G network surveillance tools and smart city data centers, Beijing weaves these nations into its digital orbit, expanding its long-term diplomatic influence. As you see in the image on the left, noting how the complex, tightly interwoven digital web visually mirrors China's highly connected state-controlled digital architecture. So while the United States relies on private innovation and China commands a state-led infrastructure network, Europe charts a completely different path. Let's look at how the EU uses regulation as its primary diplomatic tool. So our third regional pillar brings us right here to the European perspective. While the United States prioritizes market innovation and China for state-driven power, Europe has carved out a unique superpower status based on the power of the rule of law. The EU positions itself as a global guardian of individual rights. Its strategy is not built on producing the biggest technology firms, but on creating a protective, values driven framework centered on fundamental human rights. The legislative playbook, by relying on landmark frameworks like the GDPR and the Comprehensive EU AI Act, Europe has set the benchmark for global compliance. These laws mandate strict data privacy, algorithm transparency, and clear boundaries for high risk AI applications. The Brussels effect. Even though Europe has a smaller domestic commercial AI footprint compared to its American and Chinese counterparts, it exercises massive global influence. International technology companies must comply with EU rules to access its lucrative market, effectively turning European regulations into the default global standard. The image on the left showing the European Parliament building Espace Leopold, emphasizing the institutional slavery heart of the strategy. The Brussels effect clearly and deliberately summarizes Europe's primary leverage in the global tech race. So now that we have analyzed the distinct playbooks of the United States, China, and Europe, let's bring these threads together to look at our final conclusions and strategic recommendations. So let's look at how the world's major powers handle AI. We can break this down into three distinct models: the US approach, in the China approach, and the Europe approach. Each region navigates technology based on its core political values and economic goals. First, look at the United States approach. United States prioritizes market innovation and fast commercial growth. Their strategy relies heavily on private sector leadership. In foreign policy, the United States focuses on building tech alliances with democratic partners. They also integrate AI deeply into national security and defense systems. Next, we have the China approach. China uses a state driven centralized model. The government controls major technology initiatives, leverages massive amounts of domestic data, and monitors platforms closely. Globally, China exports its digital infrastructure and AI capabilities. A key example of this is the Digital Silk Road project, which expands their tech influence across developing nations. Finally, let's examine the Europe approach. The European Union focuses heavily on regulation, digital sovereignty, and ethical governance. They champion a human centric model. This means AI development must respect privacy, safety, and transparency. The strict legal framework like the EU AI Act sets a global standard for consumer protection. So, closing these thoughts to bring everything together. AI is no longer just a technological tool. It is now a fundamental force reshaping global diplomacy. It changes how nations communicate, how leaders make strategic decisions, and how countries compete on the world stage. However, technology alone cannot build stable international relations. For AI to succeed as a diplomatic tool, we must keep human judgment, transparency, and international cooperation at its absolute core. Machine learning can process data, but it cannot replace the human empathy, cultural understanding, or ethical responsibility. Ultimately, we stand at a critical crossroad. AI offers transformative opportunities to solve global issues, yet it also brings major ethical and governance challenges. Managing these risks carefully is the only way to ensure long term global stability and international trust. Thank you very much for your attentions, and I wish you to enjoy the rest of the conference. Good night.